get this sucker going. Um, it's such an interesting. First off, how are you, man? It's been a minute. I know we talk on the phone a whole bunch, text back and
Yeah,
forth, but it's good to see you.
yeah. Things
Um,
are good. Busy.
yeah, man. It sounds like it. So tell me, this is just. I mean, we're recording, but I won't put this in the show. Tell me about the NWTF Hall of Fame thing. That's exciting.
Yeah. I don't remember what we've talked about, but
You just
you
said you
know
were a
the
part of it. You didn't tell me. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
elaborate.
yeah. They wanted a committee. Um,
Okay.
they wanted a committee to do that, and so I think they tried to choose, a cross section of people that they felt, knew call makers, knew the history, and this year, I mean, it just, I would say, be very similar to last year in terms of, process and everything else. But then perhaps next year there's a chance to really step back from it and say, is this an opportunity to, call out, certain things, distinguish, some pieces within the call making community. So I guess that's the
Yeah,
opportunity going forward. Is what'll that look like? So
that's really neat. Yeah,
yeah,
that's really cool. Man, I'm slipping in the slope of buying turkey calls. I don't need, Brent. I don't like it. Um, so far, I mean, I sent you that one. I've got it close. I thought it was really neat. It's just oh, it's sitting over on my shelf. Doesn't matter, but it's a pot call that a guy makes, and he like hand drew this picture. Do you remember that? I think I sent that to you. He hand drew a
yeah,
picture of just a tom, like in pencil. I'm like, man, that's just really neat. It's just kind of hokey looking. And then he paid a guy to like engrave it on metal, aluminum, and that's the sounding board.
well, that is
And it was
cool.
pretty. Yeah, it's really neat. And then I bought a Map Van Sice box call, his carry call from 2023. I don't need that, but I love it.
Oh yeah.
Um,
I've never shot a turkey I wanted to give back, and I've never
yeah,
met a turkey call I don't like.
yeah, yeah. This is. It's funny. I thought this was like I found this when I went down to
Oh,
hunt.
oh
When I went
yeah,
down to hunt Osceolas, I found this in it like a roadside stop like hunting store, and it was in the packaging, like the original packaging. It's all like crinkled and
mm,
like faded yellow, and there's nothing about the internet on there. It was all, hey, you can send us money to get this VHS tape or get this like cassette tape, and it was really neat. So
oh yeah. I've got a signed Tom Gaskins call, and it's one of my treasures because I mean he was quite a personality. It's funny because he said he got asked to sign calls and he didn't want to do it. He's like, "Who am I to sign a call? I'm not going to do that." But I've seen three. I'm sure there's more than that out there, but
yeah,
they're not common. So, and I love
yeah,
having signed items, right? To me, that's, again, you've heard me talk about how all these things are part of the people that made them, and when they sign them, I think that's a neat thing to have for posterity.
man, it is. It's pretty cool. Matt Van Sice signed that call that I have, and I'm just like, oh yeah, man, pretty neat.
Yeah,
So it
yeah,
is. It just adds another layer.
yeah,
We
yeah. I
were,
mean, that's special. I mean, he's going to be talked about in turkey circles for many, many years to
yeah,
come, probably generations. Amazing.
yeah. You and I were talking the other day, and I had this thought. And I just sat on it, and I'm because I wanted to like when you were talking about that journal that you write. My thought was, I'm like, man, I wanted to say this the other day, but I didn't. I just like I wanted to think about it a little bit more. But and however many 50, 60, 70 years when you and I are long gone from this earth, there's going to be people bidding on your damn hunt journal, uh,
Yeah.
collecting the Brent Rogers turkey hunting journal, and they're gonna be like, "Why the hell did he mark all these numbers? Like these, what are all these? Why did he redact all of this information?" And
Oh yeah.
just because I mean, you talk about like legacy, like you said, and you're the same way, man. People have been talking about you for a while. And I just thought, if like, it's not our time. It's not ours. It's what's the saying? It's not ours. It's just our turn.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's kind of where
That's
we're.
what
Yeah,
that's just it. I mean, like I feel like I'm a caretaker, a curator of some of this
yeah,
stuff, over time, and yeah, yeah, just
yeah.
paging through looking at stuff now. It's just funny it's good to have those memories. I mean, I got this is my journals, you know, full of stories and
Oh
hunts
wow, the
and
pictures.
people, and just a neat way to you know, go back and relive those memories.
Yeah, it's so cool. And like I said, just to think, someone's and decades down the road, okay, you're never gonna believe what I got my hands on. It's
Well,
gonna be the
yeah, I mean, I don't know what kind of notoriety any of us had to have. Hopefully, it's out of respect and not because we're.
yeah, you know,
No, that's I love finding stuff like that. So.
yeah, I do too. I want to show you. I told you a couple weeks when we'll be talking about this. I wanted to start with a picture. I want to show you a picture. I want to get your I like your thoughts. Um, so we're gonna start with this one. Can you see my screen?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. Do you know what this
Yep.
is?
Yeah. That's it's basically what I would call like a cave. Um, uh, can't think of what they're called at the moment, but yeah, like
Cave
a
drawing, cave sketch. So
petroglyph or you know
yeah,
that kind of a yes.
yeah. So this is the smart folks, the anthropologists, paleo, whatever. They'll tell you this is a great horned owl. Definitely looks like a great horned owl. Feathers, the horns. I'm going to give that to the great horned owl. Now this is another drawing in that same cave. What do you think that is? Look at
Well,
the barring.
your screen didn't change.
Here, how about this? See it?
Oh yeah. Yep.
What,
Yeah.
what's that look like to you?
Turkey.
It looks like a turkey. And so
Absolutely.
any information that like any the great horned owl, I get it. Like that's what it looks like. But there's no that I've not read anything that says like that drawing is a turkey. But if any of us have ever scared a turkey and watched it pitch off the side of a ridge, that's what we see. We see those barred wings stretched
Oh yeah.
out. We see that triangle tail, that beautiful,
Yep.
gorgeous wingspan. And I mean, that's 6,000 years old, that drawing.
It's
That's
phenomenal. And
incredible.
it is, Paul, and there are a number of states that have wild turkeys in some form captured, basically on caves. I mean, Iowa's one of them, and I mean, even Minnesota. You wouldn't think about people didn't think there were a lot of turkeys in Minnesota way back when, but there were turkeys there, and there's the famous cave in Tennessee, which I'd love to go visit, where more recently they've discovered some of that, and
That's where those drawings came from.
okay, so that's it. Yeah, and
That's
I mean,
done already.
there's people, and again, in Native American society, there was what they called the Thunderbird, and that was more of a kind of a spiritual significance, and there's some of those that I might think look like turkeys, where Native Americans would say they're Thunderbirds, and other ones are turkeys, but just realizing there's that whole that whole span of things, but yeah, there's been many generations admire and pursue the wild turkey prior to ours.
Yeah, that's so. It's when we look at like one of the questions that I ask myself quite often, and I ask people like you, um, why the turkey's so important. Why it's so impactful. Why it's so I guess I mean it's just like magical on some levels, and none of us can answer that question
I think it's
effectively.
it's personal. It's so
A
personal,
hundred
and
percent.
but there's enough people that feel that way that it's also societal, right? I mean, because
Yeah,
you have seen that throughout time, where the turkey commands some kind of a reverence or respect that transcends a lot of other creatures or a lot of other wildlife, and you know, some of it's understandable because turkeys by nature are they're so wary and they're so good at
yeah,
surviving, and they've had to be because everything wants to eat turkeys. And
yeah,
so yeah, I think it's been interesting to kind of see how they've commanded respect based on their ability to survive, and how they've woven themselves, or how we've woven them into the fabric of who we are as
yeah.
Americans.
And it's neat to see, like, and I have, like, whenever I see a cave drawing, and it doesn't matter what it is, and we've got some really neat cave drawings here in my home county, and then we go up to on Lake Erie. There's some petroglyphs and drawings on rocks, and whenever I see them, I always think to myself, I'm like, that was just a bored kid. That was a bored kid 6,000 years ago that was drawing pictures of the stuff that he saw or she saw, and she's just doodling on the home wall, just like my 5-year-old does all the time with markers. And so, I mean, I just think when I saw that picture the first time I saw it, I'm like, man, that's so cool. Like, that freaking bird, man, it's captivated people since the first human heard a turkey gobble. And
Well,
it's neat.
yeah,
It's neat to,
it is. And think about it from the perspective that it was before there was written language in this country, and
yeah.
to actually commit something to a space that you lived in, or that was, I mean, I think it had to have some significance too, because that was how language came alive for folks before they had written language.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. You and I have talked. You've led me down a turkey black hole that I hope I never get out of, and I
Yeah.
appreciate that. And I thank you for that. It's driving my wife nuts. She didn't think that it could be like any more part of my life that I'm like, hey, did you realize that there's
Uh,
historical accounts back to like the 1400s of wild turkeys? Listen to this, and she's just like, oh god, man, this guy. Um, so when we during this, I'm gonna edit a lot of this stuff out. I've hired a person that's going to help me edit and like piece together these stories. Um, and so if we get to a point in this conversation, at any point, like what we've already talked about is fantastic. But if we get to anything, you're like, man, don't hesitate to kick a rabbit up, man, and we'll run that sucker as far down that trail as we need to, and then we'll do it again, if we have to. So, um,
that works.
we had talked about the very first podcast we did. We talked about the Oct journals, and I had seen or read some of the Oct journals just kind of in passing. I think I originally found it on the Mossy Oak Bottomland Book Club. You'd put some of those on. And I
Yep.
think that was my first like dive into the literary, I guess, accounts of wild turkeys across the time. Why do you think it's important for modern turkey hunters to care about the deep past of the long distant past of the wild turkey? Why is that important to us now?
The biggest reason for me is because what we know to be true today won't be true tomorrow. The more we can learn about where things have been, how people reacted, what worked, what didn't. I mean, 20 years ago, you would not have been able to convince anybody that we'd have been seeing a turkey decline in some parts of our country. The 80s and 90s especially, and that's when I started hunting. Those were golden years that are now gone. We still have a lot, right? We still have a lot to be thankful for with the wild turkey, but and I've heard, we heard Michael Chamberlain say it, that we're probably not going to get back to those days again. There's a lot we can do to stabilize and probably increase in certain places, but as things continue to change, as there's new pressures, new technologies, and there's the turkeys will face them, hunters will face them. The more we learn, the better we'll be.
Yeah, we're gonna just kind of piggyback off what you said. There's a quote in the Oct journals, and when I read it, I'm like, "Oh man," because like you said, it's important to know where we've been, and this is like when I read this, I'm like, "My goodness, man!" So this is a quote from a guy named Francisco Hernandez in 1515. Okay, and I'm just going to read. I'm going to read the quote. Um, It's at present, one only meets the wild ones. He's talking about turkeys, the wild ones in the northern provinces. They betake themselves to the north as the population increases, and then as a necessary consequence when the forests become more rare. So when I read that, my understanding, tell me if I'm wrong, that's urban sprawl. That's what we're doing now. That's the cities creeping out into the habitat. That's habitat loss. It's habitat destruction. That's more human and wildlife interactions in 1515. And obviously, like, their perception of their world was a lot smaller than what our perception of our world is now, just because, I mean, this is the beginning of really exploration on this country. But you have to say in 1515 that, like, yeah, the turkeys were here, and now there's more people, and we're reducing the forest to build and do all these things, build homes and lumber and industry, and so the turkeys are moving farther and farther away from us. Like, I mean, we're doing the exact same thing right now in 2023 as they were doing in 1515, and that's one of those, like, when I read that, I'm just like, my goodness, we never change.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good parallel to draw, because the Spanish at that time were in Mexico, and that was their point of reference. And if you look at the Aztec Empire and the Mayans and all the the societal build up over time there, I mean, these were huge communities, right? And a lot of agriculture, and they talk about the wild ones being in the north. Well, that's because the wild turkeys all around, as you're calling it, like that urban area, they were gone. I mean, they had domesticated the turkey, and they got quite good at capturing turkeys. And I'm sure there was interbreeding, and over time, all around that society, those wild turkeys were gone. In fact, so this already, and I've mentioned it on other things I've done, but the actual wild turkey that is the Mexican wild turkey that the domestic turkeys we have today come from, that were right there and the Spanish took back, that species is gone. I mean, it was basically domesticated and wiped out in the wild.
I'm glad that you said that. I just reading through these journals, and I haven't read all 5 of them, because they refer to the Mexican turkey a couple of times, and then they refer, when those turkeys would be trapped, or, and taken across the ocean, they would call them, they call them Indian fowl, which I thought was because of the West Indies. That's where they were coming from. So that's the term. But I did not realize. I honestly, I thought the Mexican turkey, I thought they were just referring to the Gould's turkey or the Osceola. I mean, that's what I was thinking.
Right. No, and this would have been in between the two, right? So yeah, it would have been kind of the turkey that would have been in the larger part of Mexico there.
I read an article just recently, Brent, that there's a group that is raising money, and they're doing all these studies and research to bring the woolly mammoth back to life through cloning and through pulling DNA. Okay, so we need to derail that project right now, and let's get the Mexican turkey reestablishment or revitalization project going. I don't know what we're going to call it, but let's make that.
I don't know if there's how many DNA strands, or I mean, they base this on the fact that the DNA, and I mean, I'm a biologist, so I should be able to speak with more authority here, but I'll be careful to say I'm not an expert at this. I just know what I've read, so I don't want to misspeak. But my understanding is that the genetic, traceability of domestic turkeys clearly shows that it's not, the Eastern or the Goulds or whatever, and that's why they're saying
that's what they figured out.
And I mean, I think Lovett Williams maybe was the first one I read that he was talking about that, and then there's been a lot of studies since then, and especially in even the Southeast U.S. where they domesticated them, they've done a lot of the studies there as well. So
that's interesting. One of the funny points that I read in here too. I put this down in my notes. The root of Galapavo. How do I say that? I've never heard anyone say it right.
Galapavo. I mean, Galapavo is how I say it. That doesn't mean it's right. It's just how I say it.
So give me the full. So Galapavo meleagris. Meleagris. You're the biologist, not me. I'm just an idiot. I thought it was in the Auk. He had the root of Galapavo. I'm butchering it already, Brent. It's told by Lopez de Gomora in 1553. It said resemblance in shape of the peacock, paven, and the domestic fowl, gallo.
Yeah, that's where that Galapavo comes from.
Galapavo. Yeah, I thought that was funny. It's just one of those someone like me, I've seen that. It's on hats. You see it, and you just never would have put those, like how that got together. I thought that was.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the turkey, how the turkey was named and how it was referred to is kind of a jumble of things over time. Just,
Oh my gosh,
you know,
there's
people
so
call it so
many.
many things. And
Yeah,
it's not, I mean,
it's like
turkey is a strange word for it to be called, given it's from America, but you know the
yeah.
history on that one. There's lots of theories. So,
Yeah, it's funny reading through all of these written accounts of the turkey, and there are some absolute like historical titans that have written about turkeys, what are the turkey cocks, pea turkeys, like all of the the different names that this bird has gone through. I was astounded to see some of the. I mean, you've got Columbus, Cortez, Coronado, Montezuma. I mean, you're talking like massive historical names and figures
yeah,
that
yeah,
interacted with this bird and cared enough to put it in their report. And a lot of the historical like documents we have were like reports back to like their homelands, right?
yep,
I think
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, thank goodness for the people that went back and researched those original documents. I have not done it. Everything I've got on that has all been secondhand. I mean, I've never spent time to, and my Spanish is muy mal. I mean, I don't dare try to translate something from Spanish. So,
yeah.
but
I was
thankfully
actually
that has been done.
that was one of the questions I was going to ask you. Like these original documents, where are these? I mean, these got to be in museums, right?
Well, many of them would be, if they're still in existence, they would almost have to be with like the Spanish and the Portuguese governments and places like that. That because a lot of these records they were eventually turned over to royalty, to the kings and queens of
Yeah.
those countries.
Talking about like I've got to figure out. I want to put this um sorry here. I want to add this like in the chat here. There's a name that Antonio de Herrera writes. The Yucatan was called by the natives, and he gives like the native
Oh
tongue.
yeah,
And you know what I'm talking
yeah,
about. I don't know
I
what
do. Yeah.
I have absolutely no idea how to pronounce this. And I'm sure when I go back through and edit this, I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna ask someone how to pronounce this. But the one thing that that drives me nuts about like a lot of like American culture is we name things after stuff like the Cumberland Mountains, named after some dude from England that never stepped foot in America. Just some rich guy's last name Cumberland, the Duke of Cumberland, named after him, and then we name things, just these funky little names with no meaning, right? Just maybe the highest bidder, whoever funded the expedition, and then in the name of the Yucatan, the root meaning was the land of deer and turkey. Now,
Exactly.
Brent, that is the type of naming that
Yeah,
I can get behind. So we
no
need to get
doubt.
back.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah, we need.
that's a great thing. Yeah, I hope someday to visit a turkey there. I've never done that, so.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. Um, I'm going to ask you, like, I found it interesting, or I found it just like exceedingly neat. We talk about like the relationship of, like that, just that mystique that surrounds the wild turkey. Um, and for these guys, for these folks, and the 1400s, 1500s, um, it was very much rooted in they're tasty, they're good to eat, they're fun to watch, and they're good to eat. And I was reading, um, like these turkeys were sent to they were captured and they were sent like they were on like the table of kings. I mean, that's like a fascinating.
Oh
Most people
yeah.
don't know that.
Well, yeah, that's how it started. Is turkeys. I mean, because the only reason it really ever spread beyond that is because turkeys are such prolific, reproducers,
Mm.
and the fact that they were reproducing it was that's that was a boon to the whole world, because it became a species that the whole world consumes as protein now. And
Yeah.
but yeah, it started out that was much like a swan or a peacock or something like that, where it was. You're exactly right. It was on the table of royalty in Europe when it first went over.
That's that's our bird. So keep your hands
Yeah,
off of it, right? But that's still pretty cool.
yeah,
To like just to the effort to take a turkey from America, North America, and transport it all the way to Spain, to England, to France. That's tremendous. I mean, there was a
yeah,
lot of other things those guys had to worry about. Um,
yeah. We probably underestimate, yeah, the amount of work it took to do that. I mean, to keep them alive on that journey and feed them and clean up after them, and that couldn't have been a pleasant thing. It would have been hard enough life on a ship without trying to keep turkeys alive and clean up after them. But they
oh
obviously
yeah,
saw an inherent value in bringing something back that was such a big part of the society they saw here,
yeah.
and yeah, it's just amazing.
I like to think that like I just create this story in my head that's like someone heard that turkey gobble and like, man, we got to get that thing on the ship. That was cool. Did you hear that? Like, let's go get a couple of those, whatever those are. Um, I I've got there's something in my notes here I wanted to bring up. I got to find it. When we're like is here's and I don't I said, this is something I've like just typed this out and I said the quest for human knowledge. Maybe I typed, I have no idea. The quest for human knowledge, expanding our world, included accounts of wild turkeys from all across America for centuries. The time of Columbus, Cortez, Coronado, Montezuma were filled with references to wild turkeys and their behaviors, impacts, and supporting the table of ancient people. I thought that was,
Hmm.
I don't know, man. That's like the groundwork for where for where we're at now. And like you said, I think it's so important that people here's what I want to talk about. We're because now we just like to hunt them. We like to watch them. We like to listen to them. We like to see them displaying their wheels, as they're called, um, in these texts. This is an interesting point. I'd like to get your perspective on it. The first description of hunting turkeys was by this guy's got a lot of names. I'm just going to say Valdez in 1527 wrote, "If the archer does not hit in the head or the part that kills the said peafowl, uh, though it be struck in a wing or other part, it goes on the ground afoot and runs rapidly. And as it is necessary, the archer should have a good dog, uh, and so that hunter should not lose his labor in game." I mean, so 1527, we get our first, like, from what I've seen in the the first written account of wild turkey. So
Yeah.
were these? I mean, so 1527. I mean, like they're still trapping turkeys, right? They're making. Like, what were some of the contraptions that they were using to trap turkeys?
Traps and snares would have been real common. Um, and those were ones the Native Americans. I think a lot of people think that the turkey traps, like we think about them, which are made of small logs or sticks, and then dig down, so the turkeys have to kind of go down and then back up to eat the grain in the pen. That was Native Americans that were ingenious enough to come up with that, and snares as well. There's good documentation of that, in the continental U.S. later when
Okay.
European settlers arrive here.
So what, like when you get like the first, I mean, the first European settlers were, I mean, it was conquest. I mean, it was dead set. It was virtual warfare from the moment that they set foot on the soil over here and in Central America and the Caribbean, the West Indies. Like how, I mean, do you know? I mean, how well the native folks were assisting these people coming over? The European explorers and conquistadors and settlers and all of these people. I mean, were 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 they teaching these folks from Europe how to hunt these turkeys?
Most of the history that is recorded, the early history does indicate that the Indians weren't immediately hostile. Right, that and that happened a lot around the world. I think as
Yeah.
people encountered native cultures, that a lot of times the native cultures weren't necessarily, the ones to, start aggressions or whatever. Which, you got somebody show up on your doorstep, and you could see that going either way. But yeah, there's accounts of plenty of accounts where Native Americans here were helping to teach, you know, teach people how to survive here.
Yeah. You read some of these accounts, and there's 40-pound turkeys, and there's 5,000 or 500 birds in a flock. I mean, it was like, I mean, when you're talking about feeding for our stomachs, and we go out now, and I mean, we're lucky to, in a year to kill one or two. But I mean, these early, I mean, they're going out, and they're probably killing, I mean, dozens, I would imagine, if they're feeding all of these people. I mean, this is not, I mean, I can't imagine how many turkeys must have been running around this country.
Yeah.
500
Well, I
years
mean,
ago.
there's plenty of accounts in the Ock journals of those where Albert Hayes Wright goes and pulls all those old documents together. And again, I've said this before too, but I tend not to try to look for the one example of something. What I think you can always look for to validate whether something has got some historical accuracy is the consistency, through multiple witness reports and things like that. And there are a whole heck of a lot of witness reports, right, or people at that time that were seeing flocks of hundreds of turkeys. And settlers writing about how their kids would go out and kill turkeys. It became a kid's job in some ways. Even with the Indians, a lot of times it was the kids that were hunting the turkeys, because the turkeys were prolific. There were a lot of them.
Yeah.
And it'd be like sending kids starting to hunt small game nowadays, because that's what there's a lot of. Well, there were a lot of turkeys then.
Yeah,
Millions.
a buffalo will gore you, but a turkey won't. So cut
Yeah,
your
although if you've heard the history of the buffalo jumps and all that, that was
no.
so. And I say that's the first decoys that were probably used were Native American Indian children wearing buffalo robes that they would send out to the herd, and it was usually a young man, right, that was trying to get the herd moving, and the one that would jump over the jump and try to hang on for dear life, or swing down into the little cubby hole, and
Oh my
they'd be
God.
out there bellowing like buffalo, I mean,
Yeah.
actually bellowing like a. So I
Oh
mean,
my
there's some
God.
interesting accounts of that. That's
It's like reaping buffaloes.
well, I mean, it's easy to judge now and say
Yeah.
those buffalo jumps were terrible. They were killing thousands at a time. But apparently it didn't matter, because there were so many buffalo and they used them. I mean, even if they couldn't use them all, they were not doing this every day, right? This was
Yeah.
like probably a once a year event in a certain areas. The buffalo were moving around, and it wasn't until we got here with modern firearms and trains to carry the hides back that kind of slaughter started really adding up.
Yeah. I read in here, I read that someone, there was a quote in here in these journals from someone that said that a dead turkey will keep for 60 days and you can open it up without much smell. Um, I don't know. I've never tried. I'm probably not going to try it. They even said the feathers stayed on. I mean, that is like,
Yeah,
those people were cut from a different cloth.
I mean, it was really common to hang your game by its neck. I mean, especially fowl. The practice was to hang fowl by their neck until basically it rotted off and it fell, and then they would eat it. But you think about the fact that people's teeth weren't very good, at least with Europeans. We can make all the jokes we want about British teeth, but regardless, teeth weren't all that great, and letting the enzymes do the work. Apparently they had stronger guts than we do today. But yeah, that 60 days, I always figured that's because I don't recall where it was at, but it had to be in a very cold climate.
Oh gosh, you're not doing that in the
Yeah,
Yucatan or southern Florida.
no.
I had jalapenos on my pizza last night, Brent. I woke up with a bellyache, so good for good for those guys.
Yeah.
Reading through this first doc journal. Um, I try to like read. I guess see, and you kind of touched on this. Like see big picture, right? See trends. See like I try to understand like the philosophy of these people. That we're writing about this turkey. And Albert Hazen Wright has a quote here. Um, and it really and so you read and it's food. There's turkeys everywhere. We could go out and kill as many as we want. The joke about the Indian, I'll give you the buzzard, and I'll take the turkey, you take the buzzard, or you take the buzzard and I'll take the turkey. So there's all these things, right? It's just funny, but it was very food centric. Um, and then there's a part in here. Um, in 1735, a guy named Francis Moore writes, and he actually he wrote a book about his tour of Georgia, and he writes about the number of turkeys in Georgia, um, which it sounds like there's a million of them, and he calls the turkey the beautifulest of the feathered kind, and it looks like they were covered in gilded feathers. And then so you get that, and then post revolution, you start to see what I felt, what I read was more like people started to appreciate the turkey on a different level, and it was probably because things started to go more from exploration, the frontier, where you were really grinding out. There's a little more established people, there's established communities, there's resources, and and you start to see like these literary references that Hazen Wright was talking about. He uses a quote from a guy named Bartram. He makes several
Mhm.
references. It really differs slightly from what you saw before. It was more respect, and he's talking to, and his quotes were more about the beauty of the turkey, and it wasn't necessarily like the culinary prowess of the wild turkey. Let's eat as many as we can. You get the gilded feathers references. You've got a stately, beautiful bird. It looks like it's burnished in gold. Um, and so you see a change. You see a change there, I think, and at least in the literary references. And then one thing that I thought was really neat was you start to see the first um, literary reference of like ownership, and like we have that like right now as turkey hunters. We have a very deep, it's very personal for us, that the animal, the well-being, the hunting, defending it against people that don't care about it. We start to see some ownership, and the quote was, also from Bertrand. It said ownership. It says, so it's our turkey of America, our turkey of America. It's different than others. It's bigger, it's stronger, it's more colorful, more beautiful. That's me paraphrasing what he said, because it was a
Mhm.
lot. That's what he's saying. It's our, and that's what struck me. His exact words were our turkey of America. He was
Yeah.
comparing it to the other turkeys, and it wasn't just the turkey of the West Indies. It wasn't the turkey of Mexico. It was our turkey. And so I thought there's, for some folks in that time there was a change. I can't help but think, but that's kind of the very, very, very beginning stages of our, just I guess, like affinity and affection for our turkey, for our bird.
Yeah.
What do you,
Yeah. I've got the ornithological journal or whatever that Bartram did, and that's, I mean, trying to read the whole thing. Yeah, I'd rather pull my teeth, I think, than read the whole thing. But the parts in there that pertain to turkeys, a couple of, are well worth getting a hold of it. It's
yeah,
very interesting. Yeah, it's
yeah, I'll have to check
it's
that out.
neat to. I mean, because he was a naturalist, but I think he had a particular affinity for birds, and clearly liked the wild turkey.
Yeah. So when we like, kind of, and we're talking, the revolutionary time, the a little before, or I guess a little after. What was Bartram? Was he pre-revolution or post? He was post, right?
Those, you know,
I mean, you still had you. It's the time of the long hunters. I mean, those guys, market hunting, long hunting, um, the Daniel Boones of the world that time is forgotten. I mean, there was a lot of people putting a hurting on wild turkeys across this country.
Yeah.
Still,
Well, because it was, I mean, it was just like the Spanish quote you read from 1515, where at the time it seemed like it was an endless supply. So
yeah.
yeah,
Um, the picture that you sent me, Bert Phillips, a Pueblo hunter. Um, I always read stuff like this, and so it's so funny. It's just like, we're connected with people through generations, and it's all. I mean, it's all just through this turkey, and in the picture, it's fascinating. And here's the first, like, when I zoomed in on this picture, the first thing I'll describe it to folks, and then we'll definitely have a picture of this. Um,
I think
yeah, yeah. See if we can get that up there. The first thing that I notice is the way that his head, there's a Native American hunter with a bow and arrow, and he's crouched on both knees behind a rock, and that head, you see how his neck's outstretched,
yeah, he's trying to look
and
over, peeking over the rock.
yeah, but it's just got that like curious kind of like
Yeah,
pose where we're like, he's like, oh man, they're right there. I knew they were close, but and he's just like, and we've all been there where you're just like straining your neck and you're trying to see, but you're not trying to move because they're so close. And like, that was the first thing I noticed, was just kind of like that jaw out. And it's just, it's like, man, we're a turkey hunter is a turkey hunter is a turkey hunter, and it's just, I mean, what a picture. He's got the Tom and the gobbler in full strut there. And what I'm assuming is two hens floating around. And,
yeah, and that's
now,
a fall photo, by the way, because or
yeah,
picture, because of the aspens being yellow. So
yellow. Yeah.
again, that just because the Tom's strutting, the I went to visit a friend yesterday, and he'd taken a video earlier in the day of a bunch of Toms neck twisting, and I mean that's happening all year round.
It's such I love that. What do you like when we talk about, like, we get through, and the history of the wild turkey is, it's very fascinating. And I think, like human nature, we can't, it's just, if it didn't happen to us, it just didn't happen. Right. Or it's just such a distant, like memory. That's what it is. It's history. I'm just trying to talk through this.
Well,
Um,
and let me add, here's a rabbit hole. So
yeah.
if you read, so Bert Phillips, um, you know, who painted that, it's interesting that just like we were talking earlier, that this is the write up that went along with it, that says it recaptures the tranquility of the Indian world. The hunter, in search of food rather than sport, is not an intruder. He is part of the harmonious mountain and forest landscape. And Phillips, this was in 1898 when he arrived in New Mexico, and he was just blown away by what he saw with the Pueblo Indians, who, by the way, were the ancestors of the Anasazi, who domesticated turkeys in Southwest, U.S. And so it's neat to see that culture that still existed there, right? That had a strong bond to the wild turkey, but yet
Yeah.
you see that it's the stomach that's leading. It's the but didn't take the respect out of the formula. That's the
Yeah.
key thing, because we didn't do that as European settlers when we came. We completely dissociated ourselves. It just shows that you can still hunt with your stomach and do it in a way that is sustainable. Call whatever you want, right? Where it's
Yeah.
because it's your home, you got to live there, and you sure as heck don't want to eat today's and tomorrow's meal both, and then you got none for the day after.
Yeah. And I'm not eating 60-day-old turkey, Brent.
Me and
That
you
and that's
both.
yeah, that's kind of like, that's what I was trying to like just work out in my mind, man. And that's and that's why, when you sent this to me, I'm like, man, this is same wavelength, because when I read that, I'm like, I get it. I get what, this is hunting with the stomach, but still the curiosity, the respect, the harmonious mountain and forest, like all these things that have just a thousand things have come together to create the culture that we have today is turkey hunters. And I you heard that, you listened to that episode with Dave Owens, and it's, turkey hunting, it's rooted in reverence, and that's just my opinion. I
Mhm.
don't, I don't, um and I feel like, like Mr. Phillips, I mean, that's just, that guy gets it, and
Yeah.
it's such a weird thing that we have to deal with. And like, I've talked with so many people, and I try not to view the world with turkey colored glasses on, I guess, but it's different than other things. It's different than hunting, deer. It's different than elk. It's different than rabbits, small game, duck, waterfowl hunters. I
Yeah.
think there's probably more nostalgia than, like, in the waterfowl world, than there is in deer. And I don't know why that
Yeah.
is. Why do you think that is?
Um, I think it's because hunting turkeys is a much more personalized experience. I mean, when you hunt turkeys, it's a lot. I mean, most people that hunt deer, growing up where I do, you either got together in a big group and drove them, or you went and sat in a tree stand, and that's the way you did it. And either way, you can have a great experience. But with turkeys, you can run and gun, you can get tight to the roost, you can go sit somewhere where they're going to be later. You can try to head them off the path. I mean, turkey hunting is ultimately such a personalized experience, and it's why we're
Yeah.
so passionate, even dangerously so, because you and Dave talked about, is there a right way to kill a turkey? I thought his answer was amazing, which is there's a wrong way to do it. I would agree with that. I think you probably do too. There's
Yeah.
wrong ways to do it, but there's a lot of right ways to do it, in terms of why we're so passionate about it, because it's very, very personal. It's a chess
Yeah.
match.
It is. That's what makes it so fun. I sent you a picture of the deer that I killed earlier, in November, and I've killed a lot of deer, and it's fun. But it's just like every deer I've ever killed, I'm just like, oh, there's a deer, and I shoot it with a bow or a rifle or shotgun, and I'm just like, meh. It's not personal. This deer this year, I called him off of a doe with some rattling antlers. Came about 70 yards, just looked,
Right?
and then left. And then I saw him breed. A couple days later, I see him. He's walking through the field. He pays no attention to me. And then a couple days later, I see him breeding a doe, and I grunted at him. He stopped and looked at me, turned around and walked off. I grunted at him again, and he came in like he was ready to rip my face off. So it was very, like, I
I like
got that
I like
personal experience where I had, like, all
Yeah.
of this, interaction with this deer. It was the best deer hunt I've ever had, and it's also like the biggest deer that I've ever killed. So that was cool. I mean, it could have been,
That's
just a
awesome.
regular
Yeah.
old 8 point buck, but it was and it was just the interaction. It was the personal thing, and it was, the deer in my mind. And I think the right way to kill a turkey is, like, when you're interacting with that animal and it does things the right way, like it interacts with you. If I was just in the woods and, like a gobbler just walked up to me and I didn't know he was there, I was just there, I hadn't called to him, I'd probably just be like, I'm not doing this, man. You got to do something fun. I'm not.
Yeah. Well, I
We
mean,
don't even
and
know each other.
believe me, I'm not a discriminating hunter. I love to hunt upland game. I love to hunt deer. I love to hunt waterfowl, predators, you name it. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
in, right? I think what's unique though is, up until coyotes kind of spread across the whole U.S., where you can now go out pretty much anywhere in the U.S. and call in a coyote. I mean, I would say turkeys, more than anything, we probably had in common across the country, much of it, in terms of, up until at least, uh, turkeys got moved further west, where they historically weren't. The idea that I have is, waterfowl, you've got more limited opportunity to hunt them. I don't live in a
No.
flyway. We get a few that come by, right? But I've got to go to the river. I've got to drive a ways. I happen to live in world-class whitetail country. I'm very fortunate, but not everybody does. Um, so not everybody has equal opportunity to hunt everything, but turkeys, we have pretty equal opportunity. But there's a lot of localized ways that are right to hunt turkeys that maybe there's people hunting big timber and that's what there is, or there's people hunting public because that's all there is, or there's people hunting fields because that's all there is, or they're hunting out west where you're going to have to hoof it, and they're going to be back to the same roost. But the point being, that's how, again, I think it gets so personalized, and then we start to develop biases because it's a very localized thing too.
Yeah. Developing a bias, that's a real thing. And that's hard for people to, I guess, to acknowledge that. Let's jump back into like the historical side of it. So I mean, we can really get dirty.
Let's. Here's one thing I'd like to explore. So
Yeah.
going back to the Burt Phillips painting, so it was 1898 when he arrives in New Mexico and he sees the Native Americans interacting this way with turkeys. That's an interesting year, 1898. And you think about what was happening in the world of the wild turkey then. And my reference is, if you go back and look at the turkey hunters from that time, it wasn't the turkey hunters that, I would argue turkey hunters of that time largely had the same respect we have today. The problem is everybody else didn't. There was not the social conscience to be aware that if you cut every tree down for a ship mast, or if you clear every field to farm it, or whatever that is, right? You drain every swamp. I mean, the problem gets to be that a lot of the other choices that are being made are detrimental to the turkeys. But it's pretty darn awesome to go back and read all these accounts and see the respect or the passion that turkey hunters had then. I think turkey hunters were still turkey hunters then, right? So that's really neat. And in 1898, going back to the reference of this gift I got yesterday, which I should tell you more about that, but that's the year that Henry Gibson patented the box call.
Wow.
And so, I mean, that's being sold through hardware stores to hunters. And so there's not only are there hunters to hunt turkeys, it would blow some people's minds to know that was the peak at the time. If you look at when European settlers came and they started developing seasons, 1898 was what I would call the peak year of turkey seasons across the country, because there were 28 states that had turkey seasons and 11 of them had spring turkey seasons.
In 1898, no kidding.
In 1898. And so it wasn't like the turkeys weren't all gone yet then, right? There were still places in 1898 that had some good concentrations. They were already gone from New York and Vermont, and parts of the Midwest, they were slowly disappearing by that time. But in a lot of especially the South and West, there are so many people that traveled to Texas to hunt turkeys, or there were people all across the southeast U.S. that were building turkey calls at that time, and Gibson is just an example of that. But there was a rich culture of turkey hunting then.
Now, I guess that culture would have started to develop when seasons and bag limits were instituted, right? I mean, if it's a free for all, you can do whatever you want. You have no appreciation for it. If it's limited because of population, or it's limited because of opportunity, or because of regulation, I mean, just inherently as humans, we're going to have a greater appreciation. So is that kind of what kickstarted that? You think kickstarted that appreciation and that culture?
Yeah, I mean, they're going way back into the 1800s. That there were counties, that started to regulate things, or states that were doing things. What they always suffered from was lack of resources to really enforce it. But law-abiding sports people did what they did, right? I think that there was still enough respect there, whatever. The problem was, you still had people that were trapping them or shooting them off roosts, whatever, for market hunters, they were market hunters, right? That's what people were contending with. And another neat thing about 1898, that's actually the year the first wild turkey hunting book was written, and or published, I should say. And what people probably don't realize is that book that Ed McElhaney published in 1914, The Wild Turkey and Its Hunting, was written by Charles Jordan. Some people now know that, but what they don't know is that book was published in the Shooting and Fishing Journal in 1898. I mean, he was right. It was appearing chapter by chapter. And I've been able to,
in a monthly publication, right? Okay.
Yeah. And so it was weekly, and I've been able to track down all but I think four of the issues that I know were published, and it's not the entire book, but it's a chunk of it. And so I mean, and I'm sure he'd have kept doing it over time, but he got killed by a poacher in 1909. So
Charles Jordan did.
Yeah, and he's an epic guy, because the Kodak camera came out in 1888, or Kodak came out with a camera, not your Polaroid, but he was one of the first ones to take photos of wild turkeys. And do you see this picture right here?
Oh yeah,
right there. That's a photo that Charles Jordan took, and his best friend John K. Renault had colorized after he died and was selling those prints. And that's one of those originals that John K. Renault was selling.
Now that appears in his book, right?
So he's got Jordan's pictures appear in the book. They don't appear in the 1898 journals, but a lot of his sketches do, and they're super cool. It's just like we talked about the Indian, cave paintings. It's neat to see the guy's passion. He was sketching these things out that he saw.
Yeah.
But not that 1898 is a magical year of any kind. I'm just saying just because dates stick in my head. When I saw this, I'm like, there was a lot going on in the world of wild turkey hunting at that time. Yeah. All these states had seasons. They had spring seasons. People were traveling to hunt them. A book was being written about them, and pictures were being taken that would later be sold. And just to stop and think that was going on over 100 years ago, and point out the respect that existed then, I think gives us some confidence about it wasn't the turkey hunters that decimated the turkey population. It was the impact that the overall society had.
Yeah. That's fascinating, man. I did not know that. You don't know what you don't know, right? That the regulation, because we're told, like, our perception, our thoughts is unregulated hunting just wiped everything out until the 30s, when you just couldn't find a turkey or whatever. That's just how, I guess, for a lot of turkey hunters, like we just don't know. We don't ask the questions. We don't listen to the story. We talk about an instrumental time in an instrumental year, 1898. I mean, because if you're writing books, you've got people's full attention. Like, people are like, and maybe it's not a lot, but they're dialed in. They're dialed into, especially like a guy like Charles Jordan, that, I mean, he had really started to, he was like documenting his work, his habitat work, and his, the things that he was doing, and, where the turkeys like to be. And just, I mean, he was burning on the plantation too, right? Wasn't he? When he's
that I don't have record of, but okay. I mean, but I can tell you that he was an active game manager. I mean, he was, what's really cool is to look at that area still exists. That there's a friend of mine, the trumpet builder Kenny Petalore, that lives in Louisiana, and he sent me photos of that place. He drives by it, and it's still, the area now is smaller than the original area, but we both would love to get the ability to walk that property, right, where Jordan was hunting and managing the land, and basically trying to fight poachers, and cost him his life.
That's hallowed ground, man. That's like turkey hunting Graceland, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's funny. I mean, Louisiana has I can go off on tangent after tangent, but I
Do
mean,
it.
it's funny to see the history of Louisiana with turkeys too, right? So you have Jordan who was there, and then Audubon spent a lot of time when he was writing his bird journal there, and it's not known exactly where he painted the pictures of the wild turkeys, but there's a good chance it could have been there because he spent a heck of a lot of time there doing the book.
Yeah,
So it's just interesting to see some of those pieces in history that kind of segue.
kind of add up. That's neat. Where do you think like the I guess the cultural air quotes or cultural hub of turkey hunting is or was and is now? I mean, has it changed? I mean, it sounds like Louisiana. That could have been one. I mean,
Yeah,
you've got a
I
lot of
mean,
things happening.
Mississippi, South Carolina, Louisiana. I mean, that whole part of the South has a very very strong turkey hunting culture. And Florida, there's there were a
It's hard to
lot of
put it.
turkeys there and a lot of people that hunted them, and unlike the rest of the country, they didn't get wiped out, which kind of kept that culture intact. And so I think that whole area is special in terms of the culture they not only had but were able to maintain where it was lost elsewhere.
Yeah. So 1898, you've got Gibson calls in shops across the country. When did like turkey hunting is a sport? Like, I mean, when did we start to see more people participating in that? Was it in that early 1900s that you started to see more people participating in that as a sport, or is it still kind of like a weird thing that people did in the spring?
I mean, I think it was a lot more common in the late 1800s than we think. I mean, I've got I don't know if I'd say hundreds, but I'll bet I probably have 150, 200 magazines that are from 1830 to 1920 that have turkey hunting articles in them. I mean, it was fairly regular. Now, some of those were garbage articles that were written by somebody that probably never saw a turkey or just heard about one, and others are very good. I just think that in a lot of places it never went away. Well, to answer your question more directly, I think when it got big, it wasn't until the turkey was restored and the opportunity was everywhere, right? More everywhere. So that's post 1950 when it actually um, becomes a bit of Americana, right, where everybody can kind of go do it.
Yeah. There's a family from Louisiana, the House family. Have you ever heard of them? House, Houze. They they're so there's a father and a son, and then a grandfather who passed.
Oh, I see balloons.
That was weird. I have no idea what happened.
It wasn't me
That,
that sent them.
that was the weirdest thing. We're gonna put that up. That's gonna be the internet clip right
That's
there.
that right there is special.
So we're not going to cut this out. This is going to be 100% going to be in the podcast. I'm getting ready to tell you the story about this family that I've met from Louisiana, and like these balloons, just like I I went like that. These balloons just popped up on the
Yeah.
screen. That was the weirdest thing. I have no idea what just happened. But so Steve Howes is his name. He's young. He's probably my age. He's 40, and his dad. I don't know his dad's name. They call him Gobbler. But it's a family. The patriarch of the family killed his first wild turkey in the state of Louisiana in 1933.
Hmm.
They only use homemade wing bones,
Hmm.
and they do it the old school way, man. I mean, hiding in bushes, yelping turkey, I mean, striking turkeys up and finishing them on a wing bone.
Is this the Team Wingbone folks?
Yes, these are the team
Oh
wing
yeah,
bone folks.
then I do know who it is. Yes. Okay.
Okay,
Now
it just
oh, I absolutely know.
yeah,
That's
just
a
an
that's a great bunch of folks. Yeah,
man,
I
just an
love it.
unbelievable. The balloons really threw me off, man. I don't I don't know what my point was with talking about these guys, but you talk about just like oh, I know what it was. So like you talk about like just cultural, like just turkey hunting roots, man, and you got Mr. Fox, um, Fox Hayes from Mossy Oak fame. He killed his first turkey in 1943, right? So 43. When's the Fox
Yeah,
Fest? It's on there. It's
1944.
Oh, 44. Okay. I can tell. I can
Yeah.
remember if it's 43 or 44. And so you've got like the first, not, but it's, and you're telling, and here I always thought this was like the first wave of like cultural um, groundwork for modern turkey hunters, but it sounded like it started in 1898. But I mean, first guys that like, that I, in the 30s and 40s, when you guys had, you got guys like, Gobbler House in Louisiana running around, the old man, and then Fox Hayes running around as popping turkeys in the South. And I mean, we're talking like pretty low turkey numbers during that time, or was it like moderate at that time? I mean, there weren't a lot of turkey hunters then.
Yeah,
But
I mean, I think it was in decline. There were probably localized areas of lots of turkeys, and there were probably a lot of areas that had no turkeys, right? So I think it definitely would have, because again, Audubon after a few years starts to write, there's fewer turkeys now than there were just a few years ago, and everybody was starting to see that. So it probably depended on where people were at, but it was probably between 1898 or whatever, 1900 and 1930 when it bottomed out around 1920, 1930, and so it was on the way down.
So those guys and this is one I guess like the reason for this, and I love it, like the guarded turkey hunter. You hear those stories about those old school guys that were like, if they found you turkey hunting in their part of Alabama or Wisconsin or wherever you're at, Wisconsin or Louisiana, and they didn't know you, they were like, there's no turkeys around here. People like just super guarded about their turkey hunting. And
secret
I would
society
imagine
stuff.
the secret society. It's I gotta we'll talk about this, but you're talking about like society. I'm like 1898 society. That's where my mind went. Like a society of like just diehard. We're members of we're the inaugural. You're the president. I'm the vice president of the 1898 society, Brent.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, I understand that. I hope this isn't my bad nature coming out. I think it's just part of turkey hunting strategy. But yes, I walk on turkey tracks and pick up feathers at times.
Oh, 100%.
That's I just hate to give people a softball because I don't have sole permission anywhere I hunt. Multiple people hunt it, so I do my share to help others. But yet, the competitive part of me says I don't just want to give turkeys away to everybody.
Yeah, my best friend. Oh, go ahead.
Well, and if you only had 2 turkeys in a 10,000 acre tract of timber, it'd sure as heck drive you to be. You'd step on every turkey track you ever found.
Oh, absolutely! I want one of those turkeys. Yeah, my best friend that got me into turkey hunting a couple years ago. We're walking out of one of our WMAs here in Ohio, and we run into a couple guys. They're walking in, and they're like, "Hear anything?" And I'm, my friend, before I could even say, "Nah, nothing today." My friend's like, "Oh yeah, there's turkeys gobbling everywhere." But I think both of us had to go to work, and I just look at him when they walk off. I'm like, "What are you doing, man? Like, do you want to just walk them out there and say, hey, this is the tree that you should sit on? Like, what are you doing?" But it's like that guarded, those guys. I wonder, like, Fox. I'm sure this is out there, but I'm sure he walked into a general store in Mississippi. And they're like, "You hear anything today, Fox?" And he's like, "Nope." You had 5 turkeys gobbling all morning.
It'd be a great question to ask him. I mean, he certainly was passionate about making sure that they weren't hunted at the wrong time or all the time. I mean, that's a great success story there, just in terms of somebody willing to kind of step in between, as people were wanting to start to hunt. I mean, that had to take some restraint, because I'm sure he wanted to shoot them as bad as the next person, but we could all use a little bit of that, channel a little bit of that at times.
That's it, man. I like, so when we're getting into kind of like the near. I mean, they're these guys are still alive. Fox Hayes is still with us. Tom Kelly, they're still with us. He's still with us.
Oh, yeah. Representing.
Oh, there you go, man. I tell you what, I bought at convention. I bought like, gosh, probably 10 of his books last year, and I give them to every Like I meet so many of my friends. These are just good friends, you know. And I'm like, you ever read this 10th Legion? Wow. And I'm just like, boom, so you're getting. You're getting it for Christmas. I'm gonna write you a card. And I think I've probably given that I probably given 20 of those books away in my lifetime.
Yeah,
Just read it,
that's
you know.
I love that, Paul. That's such a great thing you're doing there. And I did you happen to see the what do you call it, like short film or YouTube episode that I was on the other day?
Mm-hmm. You talk about it.
So NWTF did that, and sent Nathaniel Maddox here to film it. And let me just be clear, Nathaniel Maddox is the genius, not me. I mean, he did the same thing you do. I admire you all in terms of being able to have an interview like this, and then through some editing, make sense of it and tell a good story through it. And that's what he did. But if you watch that episode real closely,
So
you'll
good.
see some personally bound copies of some of Tom Kelly's books, and those are his manuscripts, which I have. I am very blessed to have some of his, call him the copy before it was in print, and
Yeah.
so I had those kind of just bound as their own book. But that's the kind
There's
of stuff I'm passionate in finding. Oh, around the edges too.
yeah. There's it's funny when Nathaniel when they zoomed in, I saw your Tom Kelly books. I'm like,
Yeah.
look, that's my guy right there. He's got like 10 copies of every book, and I'm like, I love it.
Well, and however, each one of those is a different edition and printing. There's no duplicates. So in other words,
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
every time the book was printed, and David Clark, who's Tom's business manager, and myself, and Jim Cassida as well, have all done little bits and pieces of trying to write up. Here's every edition and printing of 10th Legion that's ever been done, and I've got every single one. And so yeah, none of those were called duplicates in a way. It's the same book, but just in a different printing or edition.
That's so
That's
cool, man.
that's the level of my nerdishness that
I love it. Yeah,
most people cringe.
Yeah, I'm getting there. You're gonna push me over the edge at some point, but I thought it was around the edges too that this story was from. I can't remember what book it was from, but someone filmed Colonel Kelly reading an excerpt from his book, and he talks about his friend. He said, if I needed a guy to kill a turkey for $1 million, it'd be Jim Anders. Do you remember the story?
Vaguely. Yeah.
So Jim Anders was just a dear friend of Colonel Kelly's, and he passed. And I mean, it sounds like he passed a while ago. I think he wrote this book in the early '90s, and it sounded like Jim had been dead for a couple of decades. So but he says of Mr. Anders, he says that he was the best. He was a turkey magnet. And he would just go into the woods, and he wasn't the best yelper. He wasn't the best turkey caller, wasn't the best woodsman, but turkeys just loved him. Like he just had an understanding of like where to be. And he talks about his friend dies, and he goes out shortly after the funeral, and there's all these turkeys gobbling, but they didn't care about what Colonel Kelly was doing. They just ignored him altogether. And he kind of it sounds like in the grieving process he thinks about it as like his like a funeral oration with turkeys for his friend. It's just really neat, man. It's a very powerful story.
I mean, I'm thinking, and it reminds me, so like, is it Unfaded Roses?
I cannot remember the name of the story.
Faces in the Crowd. Those are, I mean,
that's it. I think it's Faces in the Crowd. That's where it came from.
Yeah, because they tell these are the stories that are. I mean,
yes.
Faces.
That's what it is. It's Faces. It's Faces in the Crowd.
Yep.
And there's an audio version of that and it is unbelievable, man. And so he talks about Mr. Andrews and where he's buried. And so when I was in Alabama this year, I'm like, I want to go see Jim Andrews' grave. So I go to the cemetery. Like I just Google it. I'm like, okay, here it is. I was like 90 minutes from it. So I like veer out of my way, and I walk around this damn cemetery trying to find Jim Andrews' grave, and I could not find it. And I'm next year, man, I am bound and determined to find Jim Andrews' grave. I'm gonna put a turkey feather on his grave, and I'm gonna Try to go
That's cool.
kill a turkey in Alabama because I've had terrible luck in that state. I scare turkeys. That's all I do now. I've scared 3 of them. So
yeah, they're well educated.
they are, man. There's some good times, but just hearing that story, like you said, faces in the crowd, and just hearing, just the reverence that Tom had for his friend, just in turkeys. It's just a special bond that turkey hunters have, and it's very unique. It's very unique, and we are guarded, but we're also willing to hunt with you. And you may not take me to your best spot. I may not take you to my best spot. But we're gonna have a hell of a time.
Yeah.
And it's just neat.
You ever read any of Jim Spencer's books?
I have not.
He is a fantastic writer, and he is a master storyteller, and his books are inexpensive. He just came out with Bad Birds 3, and he's got 3 of those, and he's got a turkey hunting journal he wrote. But anyway, I think it's in Bad Birds 1 that this story is in. It might be 2, but I think it's 1, where he writes about hunting near an old country cemetery.
Okay.
And, I mean, there is a gobbler there that's on fire, and there's something I can't remember now. There's something about the grave that I want to links to, like being a turkey hunter or something.
Mm-hmm.
And he ends up, I think, finally killing a turkey right near this cemetery, brings it back, and is taking a photo and realizes it's the very day that the man died, same day of the year.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, and it's just like, that is amazing stuff. Here he's putting this turkey by this turkey hunter's grave that died 100, and it might have been 100 years ago to the day or something like that. It was,
man, that's unbelievable.
Yeah,
that's unbelievable. Talk about, like, I just put chills. They just give you chills, the moment that you put that together, and that's just so cool, man. And it's just such a neat fraternity to be a part of.
Yeah, and if you know who Chip Gross is, he wrote a great fictional book called Home at Last is the Hunter.
Okay.
And, that is like a perfect epitaph, and he's going to put it on his tombstone. Home at Last is the Hunter.
Yeah.
And I just that's so. I mean, we tend to be a call it a thought-provoking crowd as turkey hunters. Maybe it's because we sit in the woods and have a lot of contemplation time. But you putting feathers on Anders' grave, I mean, that would touch the heart of anybody. That I just think it's neat.
Man, that's what I want.
Like
that's what I wanted. I was so disappointed. I walked around forever, and I'm like, man, I cannot find this guy's grave,
That's
man.
Cool.
And I'm gonna get it. Maybe we'll go do it together next year in Alabama. We'll find it together. But it's I don't know. I love it. That's I just you talk with people, and they and like I told Dave Owens, getting it, you don't get it. That's part of getting it. I don't get it.
Yeah,
you get that. So
what a weird we're just, and we are instant friends in some regard. I mean, we have things we can quibble over all the time, but you meet people you go to convention or a sports show or wherever, and I mean, we just have a connection. And so going back to this, what I was going to tell you is, so last night I go to where I grew up hunting is what I call the county line. It was truly the county line between 2 counties. Our farm is right on the county line, right? And the neighbors, and they've got an old farmhouse there that's just kind of like our clubhouse. And we go there, and so we had some of the family there was back from New York to deer hunt, and so we got together. We're having dinner, and the guy who was my dad died 3 years ago, but these guys are my uncles, right? I mean, they're just like my uncles. They're so close, and their kids are like darn near brothers and sisters, and the people I grew up with. And he brings me a box wrapped in a Christmas gift and says, "You're getting the Hunter of the Year award this year." And I remember a couple years ago, buddy of ours that comes back from out east, or no, he's out west now, got it because he killed a turkey in the snow. And I heard you talking about hunting in the snow with Owens, and I've killed some turkeys in the snow here in Iowa, but I gotta say it's a lot more fun taking the photo than it is hunting the turkey in the snow.
Yeah,
and
it looks
I didn't
great.
kill one that year, and my buddy did, so he got and he gives this to me, and because he knew that it was gonna touch me, but then I started reading it, and as soon as I got to the part that was talking about the tranquility and the hunter in search of food rather than sport is not an intruder, and
read the whole thing.
Well, I'll just read the first pair. A Pueblo Hunter by Bert Phillips is a romantic portrait of a traditional Indian activity that recaptures the tranquility of the Indian world. The hunter in search of food rather than sport is not an intruder. He is part of the harmonious mountain and forest landscape. Phillips, shocked by the destruction caused by unheated forest fires and by the thoughtless cutting of forest timber, was active in establishing the Kit Carson National Forest. He was also the first ranger of the Taos Forest Preserve. And there's turkey hunters that have gone there to turkey hunt. But I just thought, again, it's hard to see, but I've got a picture right here of a Native American hunting a turkey in much the same way this is. But so let's just say the tears were flowing last night because that connected on a deep level, right? That was just really cool. So yeah, Tom Hoskins, that's the guy's name that gave it to me. He's just like an uncle.
What was the part that really like hit you the most? Just the interaction, just that we're part of a bigger system.
The part that hit me is these came out of a magazine, an old magazine, and he cut these out years ago and framed them and had them, and they were in the upstairs of his house, and I mean, he's listened to some of the podcasts I've done, and he's seen the and as it instantly connected, like he's talking about the very thing that I years ago identified as something that is deeply spiritual or deeply important about hunting, and how it's more, even it can be, even when you're filling your stomach, it can be more than that. And so that's the part that I think was the deep, the deep feeling behind it all.
That's so cool, man. I'm listening to podcasts and reading books, and you read about guys like Daniel Boone and like these big hunters, and Clay Newcomb has done a really good job talking about Daniel Boone and Warner Glenn, who's another dry ground mountain lion hunter. Who, this guy's like 6'6", he's in his like late 80s, and he's just old. And there was this part in one of the Boone biographies where a woman had, back in right before Daniel Boone passed away, had gone and interviewed the I think she referred to him as the old hunter, the old mountain hunter, or something like that. And she described Daniel Boone as being meek and very reserved. And then in Clay Newcomb's podcast with Warner Glenn, he had that same feeling about Warner Glenn at this age, and talked about like these men that were just physically powerful, and the things that guys like Daniel Boone faced in their life were, we just as modern Americans have no idea what that type of life is. We have no idea.
Yep.
And it's funny, like, but then you hear guys like modern guys like Warner Glenn, and so I have this theory about, and I've met, and I'm sure you have too. You've met hunters that are just physically imposing, but they're just calm, they're meek, they're old, and I don't say that as being derogatory. And I feel like the reason that is, like, it's easy for hunters as we age and we get older, because we've spent a lifetime feeling small. When you're in those big woods, when you're in the wilderness, when you're in the mountains, when you're up against a turkey that's smarter than you'll ever be, most of the time they're smarter than you. Like, we win every once in a while, but you're used to losing. You're used to feeling small. You're used to being outwitted by a critter with the brain the size of your thumbnail. And you do that for a lifetime. I think that really gives someone perspective and an understanding of their place in like the circle of life, right? We're comfortable with death. We're killing animals, we're taking lives, we're beating our
Mhm.
bodies, we're beating our brains, and at the end of the day, when I say the day, at the end of our life, man, deep breath, and then you're just used to feeling small. I think that's where a lot of that is rooted in, and I think turkey hunters
Yeah.
especially, and someone like Warner Glenn, a guy, I mean, you're hunting mountain lions. I mean, like you are in it, man. You're in the danger. And turkey hunters, we're used to just getting our faces kicked in. You either learn to love it or you don't do it.
Yeah.
But you feel
Yeah.
so
I think,
small.
I mean, I think you're right about that. It's because you feel small because you understand the context of the world you're in. You
Yeah.
understand that you are a piece of it. You are a piece of it, and it will be gone, it'll be there when you're gone. I
Yeah.
mean, you shoot a forest monarch, and if you're a good hunter, you feel a little bad. I mean, and I love the Ben Lee quote: "If I could breathe life back in him again, I would." Right? I mean, we all would. We respect those turkeys, and yeah, we'd like to hunt them again. It's not because, but it's because we understand our place, right? And the turkey's
Yeah.
place. And yeah, I feel a little small, and you understand sacrifice. I mean, anybody that has only ever bought their meat from a store, I'm sorry, you don't have the same appreciation for life than
Yeah.
somebody who has to take it to eat their meat or chooses to do it. But then you also realize, right, that's sacrifice has its place, and that death has its place, and that there's life after death.
Yeah. And I think a lot of hunters, if you acknowledge what you're doing and your role within that, like we're comfortable with death, and we're around it. And that's different. And I want to show this to you. I don't know if have I ever showed this to you?
No, I don't think so.
Do you know what this is? Your
It looks
farm?
like it looks like a furrow,
Yeah.
goes makes a furrow, right, like on a plow.
Yep.
Or yeah,
Yep. So I was in Alabama, the state that
call it
has no
call it
turkeys.
call it a knife or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Yep. And so I was in Alabama a couple years ago, and it was a family farm. It's over 1,000 acres, a really big property. This family had owned it since early 50s, and the landowner had just recently done some clearing for some timbering in this area, and it's just like this really thick, kind of nasty area. And when the timber went through, they discovered an above ground grave. There's three or four graves. I'll send you a picture of it. And it was marked. The family name was carved into to this big limestone slab, and it was the people that had originally, the landowner, the current landowner, like had to find out who these people were. So it was the original people that had settled this land. Um, And so I'm standing there looking at this grave, and this landowner's talking about it, and he talked about the farming and like just imagine the hard scrabble life and everything that they had. Imagine the turkeys that they killed here. And I look down. I'm standing like 5 feet from this. I look down and I'm standing on top of this. And you talk about like warp speed into like two different eras, man. I'm standing there like that guy touched this, broke this off. He's here. I'm here. Like I just had like this huge, just like epiphany, man. Like, oh my gosh, like it's just one of those, like it just makes you feel so
Neat.
damn small. And I
Oh
asked the
yeah,
landlord, I said, "Can I?" And it was just one of those moments in life where I'm like, man, I still, I mean, this is 3 or 4 years ago. I still don't know what to say. I still don't know what to say. I look at this thing every day, man. This is kind of like one of those, reminders. Like you're here for a small, short time, man. Enjoy it. Be kind and enjoy the people that you get to meet. Enjoy the time in the woods, man. Have some perspective. Have some context with what you get to do every day.
yeah. I
So,
love your appreciation. I mean, what you just talked about and displayed is what drives collectors. I mean, yes, there
yeah,
are collectors that do it just for the money. I mean, what I always hate to see is the collector that goes and gets something really great just to cash in on it. Now, I got no problem with somebody making money on it or selling it. That's perfectly fine. It's just when that's your mission,
yeah,
because unfortunately, then you never really connect to the stuff. What you just talked about, I mean, 99 out of 100 people would look at that and consider it junk or not even give it another thought. But collectors or people that appreciate people, those are the links between people, right?
Yeah.
Art, calls, books, knives off old plows. Those are connections between people.
Yeah. That's so cool. What was the first turkey call you ever bought as like a collector item? Do you remember?
Yeah, I mean, some of the production calls I used to buy to hunt with are now collector's items. But the first turkey call that I bought as a collector's item, wow, that's a great. Oh, I know what it was. So it was a Forest Rider box call. Forest Rider was a Iowa call maker, and that's what had my interest. Is I was just aware that there were very few Iowa call makers, especially any historically significant one, and that's before I even knew that Forest Rider was, let's say, known as a call maker. And he's probably not to most people. Most people would have to look him up in the Mickle book or something else, right? But I remember that. I'm like, oh, this is really cool. This is actually a call that has some history right here in Iowa.
That's so cool, man. I don't know why I get so excited about just holding stuff like this or holding it's funny the value that when I say value, I don't mean monetarily. I say like the significance, the value that we put on something like a turkey call or a farm knife, whatever that's called. I'm always intrigued by, like you said, the historical significance with that call. And you had it, and you're like, oh, I didn't realize this is impactful. That's so neat, man.
Yeah.
Did you
Well, yeah.
you listened to my first turkey call story with Dave Owens?
Oh yeah, yeah. That's
was
where you didn't condition the surface. That's I love
oh
that.
gosh, man. Thank
That's
God for
funny.
YouTube. These kids nowadays, they can just YouTube something and it's just like at their fingertips, man.
Yeah.
I good for them.
Yeah. Well,
Man,
that's a fact. It's a lot easier to learn when you have all the tools at your disposal we have
yeah.
today.
What else is there anything else pressing on your heart, man, that you think that you want to hear or you want to say? You had a lot of notes, I know. I mean, I don't know if this was whenever I do a podcast, I have like a very general idea of what I want to talk about, right? I don't like to structurally put people in little boxes. Like I want to talk unless it's like a big like production turkey calls. That's the topic. I don't want to talk about like specific things. I want to talk about, let's see where the conversation leads us.
Yeah.
And I was very curious where this was going to go. I always enjoy it, man. I
Yeah,
do.
me too.
I never,
Yeah.
and here's, I mean, what's neat is you and I could do this call tomorrow again, and it'd be totally different.
Yeah. But yeah, it really is infinitely, uh, you know, untappable in terms of all that you could talk about. And that's okay, because hopefully you'll be doing something like this for a while, and then others will follow in your footsteps. And it always helps to get multiple perspectives. I just want to say thank you for thank you for the platform you're providing these kind of conversations, because it's very much needed. And it's not because
It is.
It's not because people are worse today than yesterday, or the new generation doesn't get it or something else. It's because there's a lot of competing things for time. There's a lot of different ideas, and as great as it is to have things at your fingertips to learn, there's a lot of things that you can learn without context or without fully grasping. I mean, like I'm a fan of like Michael Crichton's books. If you ever read, like, he wrote Jurassic Park, right? Now, one of the great lines in Jurassic Park that I liked was where he was talking about one of the scientists that was, again, using the kind of cloning technology to recreate dinosaurs, and was being criticized because, kind of like, you are using tools you have no appreciation for. It took centuries for people to learn all the knowledge that you're now using indiscriminately and to your detriment. And I feel the same way about turkey hunting, that it's our job as turkey hunters that now have perspective, because I was in those shoes once, where I was a new turkey hunter. I had the bloodlust, and I just wanted to write in my journal, this is whatever, the 98th turkey I killed or something, right? And then tell a great story about it. But as I went back and blacked all that out, was because I'm not ashamed of the number of turkeys I've killed, but I'm also not fixated on that. It's quite the opposite. I'm fixated on the ones I want to live, and I want to still be able to hunt them along the way. And that's what things like this are great for, is for us to help in a fun, informative, hopefully kind of way to broaden the conversation. So thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you, man. I appreciate that and appreciate your perspective. There's so many people that are creating content, based around killing, and killing is part of what we do. Like Dave said the other day, and you'll say, and I'll say, like, that's what we want to do. We all want to pick up a dead turkey and put our hands on a dead turkey. That's what we want. And my thing is, there's enough of that around. And I'm not the best at killing turkeys, but I love the storytelling. I love the different perspectives that people have. I love the different appreciations that people have, and we don't focus enough collectively on that, And I don't think there's enough of this. And I hope there's a dozen people that are talking about this and doing the same thing and telling the stories and trying to bring a little reverence back into modern turkey hunting. I think that we've really, we're a protective group, and I think it's great. I want the protection to be rooted in love for our fellow hunters, rooted in respect for our fellow hunters, and rooted in patience for the people that do things dumb. I don't want to just cancel someone because they, and just beat up on people because they do something wrong. I want us to talk with them, and move through. Like, there's a better way, man. We just don't need to bash people so much. I don't like that. I don't like that at all, Brent. So I do have one. Go ahead.
Well, you don't change many minds through, call it anger or shortness or whatever, right? I mean, it's a bit of a challenge for all of us, I think, to be able to have a constructive conversation without it becoming just constructive criticism. And it's important to hold the line, but you don't have to be mean about it.
Yeah, that's exactly right, man. And we've lost the ability to have good conversations with people, and I don't know. You put anything online, the hate that I get is amazing, man. It's like it's nonstop, and I'm like, why are you so angry? Like, just
there's no consequence, unfortunately, for online. I mean, that's it's a love-hate thing, right? I mean, it's great that we can enjoy things online, but it's also so unstructured and allows for lack of accountability when people can just throw stones and there's no consequences.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. There is one thing that I wanted to ask you before we end. And I feel like I'm like a little child where I'm like, Brent, oh my God, guess what I just found out? And I'll text you and you're like, yeah, it's a really cool story. And then I'm just like, I love it. He's heard this 1,000 times. It's like, but my favorite one was the Daniel Boone story where he's captured. He was captured by the Shawnee, and he's in my hometown, and not hometown, but my home state. He's in Chillicothe. And for those of you that are listening, that's the proper way to say it. It's Chillicothe, and it's the Scioto River, not the Scioto. Okay, everyone says Scioto. If you don't live in Ohio, you say Scioto. It's Scioto. But he was in Southern Ohio, captured. Had been living with the Shawnee. What was the chief's name? Blackfoot. Who captured him?
It was
Blackfish.
It's black something. I can't remember if it's Blackfish, but maybe
this will be the part of the podcast, like when I edit it, that like I'll voice over, I'll be like, it was Blackfoot or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
But so he had been, to the point where there's speculation. Robert Morgan and some other historians have speculated that he took a Shawnee wife. He was in captivity for so long. He had a long time. There was plans to raid Boonesboro, which is the settlement that Daniel Boone helped set. And he he escaped to go and warn the settlers, but the only reason he escaped was a flock of wild turkeys distracted his captors. So they were either admiring some strutters, or they were getting ready to throw some arrows or throw some balls and patches at these guys. And so I'm like, Brent, a flock of wild turkeys like theoretically changed the course of American history, right? Like that. I mean, that's crazy, man.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, those things live on in as legends, I think, because it's neat to see again how the wild turkey is woven into the fabric of who we are, and things like that just reinforce it.
Yeah. Just another layer of the mystique, man. Ben Franklin, you add that layer. It's just so neat, man. What a bird.
Yeah.
What a group.
Yeah.
Brent, I thank you, man.
Yeah. Fun. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Let me hit and record.